R. Kelly went on trial for his crimes in June of 2008, where he was greeted by crowds of fans cheering him on and shouting their support. They would line up outside the courtroom every day to catch a glimpse of him, a lot of them being young girls. During the trial, there was a lot of evidence laid out against R. Kelly, and a lot of people who came forward and said that the girl on the tape was in fact Sparkle's niece, who was 14 at the time. Her basketball coach, her friend from school, they all said it was her. But her parents said it wasn't her. Sparkle's brother actually got up on the stand, and he works for R. Kelly, or worked for R. Kelly. I don't know if he still does, but he worked for R. Kelly at the time, and he denied it explicitly. This is not her. And I'm not sure why. I don't know why. Why? Were they ashamed this happened to their daughter? Did they feel ashamed that they had to let it happen and they didn't want to be judged too harshly? Was there some money that exchanged hands in order to pay for what they said on the stand? Were they threatened? We will probably never know. Everyone in the courtroom literally thought R. Kelly was done for. So when the verdict came back and he was found not guilty, everybody was stunned. And R. Kelly, of course, he starts crying. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Okay, dude. Okay. I saw a snippet of an interview with one of the jurors who was on the R. Kelly trial, and I was so disgusted. I think it was almost probably the thing that bothered me the most about the whole documentary. And I found myself crying at multiple times in this documentary, but this bothered me and angered me and pissed me off the most. This guy, he's like some old, bald, white guy, and he says, I just didn't like them. I didn't like the way they dressed and acted and talked. I didn't believe them. And he's referring to the girls who testified that R. Kelly molested them. So I was pretty disgusted by that. And I hope that juror never sees me walking down the street, because I will tell him that to his face. Sparkle, still to this day, says 100% that was her niece on the tape, and she was estranged from her family for over 10 years because of what happened during this trial. Andrea took out an order of protection against her husband so he could not see her kids, and he, as a result, to punish her because he could not stand being out of control. He couldn't stand somebody else calling the shots. He stopped paying child support, so she was pretty much like destitute for a while because she had 3 kids, wasn't getting any money from him, and didn't really have an easy time supporting herself. She was a dancer. That was her job. Now, 3 kids later, she's got responsibilities to take care of. She can't just drop her kids and go get, a backup dancing job with some music group and be on tour. R. Kelly was still putting out music at this time, but he would never again go platinum. He did a BET interview again, and the first question was, do you like young girls? And I'll play you his response.
Do you like teenage girls?
When you say teenage, how old are we talking?
Girls who are teenagers.
19?
19 and younger.
I have some 19-year-old friends, but I don't like anybody illegal, if that's what we're talking about, underage.
The guy who was giving him the interview said he was stunned. This was a softball question. This was the first thing he'd asked him. He should have just been like, no, and moved on, but he answered it so awkwardly and creepily and weird. So there was that. In 2009, a couple things happened. Andrea divorced R. Kelly, and R. Kelly called up a 16-year-old girl that he had met at his trial to see if they could hang out a little bit. Geronda Pace was a lifelong fan, and during his trial, she would skip school and go to the courthouse during the day to watch the trial. But she did not believe he was guilty. She didn't believe he could have done those things. Like I said, she's a diehard, lifelong fan, and she's 16, but she didn't believe that he did it. He invited her to a party, and she brought her friend, and while they were there, he beckoned them over to him by the bar and talked to her a little bit, and then gave her his number and said, call me, which she did a couple of days later. When she called him, he said, why don't you come over to my house and bring your bathing suit, don't tell anybody where you're going, and call me daddy. And then she was like, okay, and he was like, okay, what? And she was like, okay, daddy, and he was like, yeah, see you soon. She arrived at his mansion in Olympia Fields, a suburb of Chicago, and she went to the indoor pool that he had there, and it was jungle themed. It's this big heated indoor pool, and it's all jungle theme. And as soon as she got there, he said, okay, change into your bathing suit and then walk for me. And she was like, you want me to walk for you like a model? And he was like, don't talk back, don't ask questions, just do it. Should have been a sign for you then, girl. Run as fast as you can. But anyways, she goes in the bathroom, changes into her bathing suit, comes out and starts walking, like a model on a runway. And then he's like, okay, take your bathing suit off now. And she's like, take my bathing suit off. And he's like, don't ask questions. So she takes her bathing suit off. And at this point, she told him she was 16 and a virgin. And he said, good, that's good. This way I can train you. Train you. And then he proceeded to tell her, just keep telling everybody you're 19 and act 21. And at this point, R. Kelly is in his 40s. So gross. She ended up staying at his house after this, and she would see other girls in the house, but like I said, they were never allowed to talk to each other. One day he saw her on her cell phone and he said, you've broken the rules. You can't have your cell phone here. You can't use your cell phone here, so don't do it again. She tells the same story, had to ask permission for everything, couldn't make eye contact with people when they were around, had to face the wall if there was people there. And she says that he was so controlling that when they were having a discussion about basketball, he told her he liked the Bulls. And she was like, oh, I like the Cavs. And he's like, no, you like the Bulls. And she was like, no, I like the Cavs. And he slapped her in her face and said, you like the Bulls now. Oh my God, I'm so heated. If she would disobey the rules at all, he would look at her and say, well, guess what? You're not eating. And then he wouldn't give her food. She'd be confined to a room in the house, in a hotel, on the tour bus, in the studio. And she would just be like locked in there, only being able to leave if she asked permission to go get some food or to go to the bathroom or to go take a shower. And then she would have to go right back to her room to await the king. He did let her out sometimes, though. He let her out when he wanted her to go find other girls for him. And so immediately, Gironda thought about a girl named Dominique, who she'd met on MySpace. They were both huge R. Kelly fans, and they'd bonded over their love of him. At this time, both Dominique and Gironda are living in the house together, but are not allowed to see each other or have any contact. But they would sometimes sneak their cell phones to try to text the other to see what was going on. Where are you? And they would try to meet up. Like they'd have to arrange a meeting. So they would text each other and say, okay, you say you're going to go to the bathroom at this time, and I'm going to go to this same bathroom at this time. You ask permission and I'll ask permission, and then we'll meet at the bathroom. They were lonely. They were just so desperate for some kind of human interaction, but it never worked because the guards or the people they had, like keeping an eye on these girls, they always made sure that it never happened. The breaking point for Gironda is when she claims that R. Kelly allegedly choked her so hard she blacked out. And then she kind of knew, like, this is really bad, this is dangerous. She told him she wanted to get a pair of shoes from her uncle's house, and then she left and never looked back. After this, she turned over all evidence of the abuse to the police, including her diary. Dominique is still living in this house, and Dominique's mother, Michelle, calls the police because she hasn't been able to get a hold of her daughter in a long time. On June 14th, 2009, the police would go to R. Kelly's house. The police told Dominique's mother, Michelle, there's nothing they can do. She's 19, she's old enough to make her own decisions, and she says she's fine, she doesn't want to leave, so they couldn't do anything for her. Eventually, Dominique would come home to her mother, but she was still secretly texting and calling R. Kelly for the next couple of years. And when she was 21, she told her mother she'd still been in contact with him, and he wanted her to move with him to Atlanta, and she was gonna go. At this point, Michelle lost all contact with her daughter, and R. Kelly changed her entire appearance. She'd always been kind of a tomboy and kind of a little rebellious, so he actually started dressing her in boys' clothes and made her shave her head, like cut her hair into a boy style, and basically just act in like a masculine way. Why did he do this? I don't know. Once again, I think it's just that whole power thing. Like, what can you make somebody do? Will this person do anything you ask them to do, even if it's cutting off all their, hair and dressing like a boy for you? As much as Michelle tried to talk to Dominique, tried to reach out to her, tried to find her, radio silence. Couldn't locate her, didn't know if she was okay. Just knew that she was with R. Kelly. Now we're going to move for a moment to Joycelyn Savage, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding this young woman. She met R. Kelly when she was 19 in 2015 at the Savage Family Boutique in Atlanta. The Savages claim that R. Kelly told them he was going to make their daughter a star. She was very talented. She has a beautiful singing voice. During her freshman year of college, he became her mentor, and in 2016, she began distancing herself from her family. When the Savages couldn't locate their daughter for a couple of days, they got worried and they started like calling and texting her, blowing up her phone, and she called back and said, "I'm with R. Kelly, I'm fine." They still thought something was going on because they knew his reputation. You know, he'd been all over the news and they knew what he'd been accused of, so they still worried about her and they wanted her to come home, but she didn't want to. R. Kelly put her on camera with TMZ to acknowledge the fact that she was not being held captive and that she wanted to be there, and to basically discredit her parents and everything that they said. It's a very strange interview. I don't know what to think about it. And at this point, the new rumor going around was that R. Kelly was running a sex slave ring, basically. Like, he was trapping these girls in his house and not letting them leave and just using them for sex. And I mean, according to a lot of the people that lived there, that's kind of what was happening, but not Joycelyn. She claims that is not what was happening. She wanted to be there. Now, in May of 2018, TMZ spotted Joycelyn along with another person walking outside of a Beverly Hills restaurant. And they basically, saw her, and you know how TMZ is. They're like, "Joycelyn, Joycelyn!" And they run over, so obnoxious. And they basically say to her, "What's going on? Like, obviously you're not a captor of any kind because you're out here just living your life." Now, just because your captor is not in the same state as you doesn't mean they cannot still be a captor to you. He could have people with Joycelyn who are watching her every move, like he's said in the past to other girls, who are making sure she doesn't do anything she's not supposed to. He also has a mental cage, right? A cage that he's built out of who knows how long of abuse and neglect and building somebody up and breaking them down. A person's captor doesn't have to be right next to them or in the same room as them or physically holding them. Well, Dominique's mother, Michelle, saw this interview and she recognized the girl who was dressed up like a boy standing next to Joycelyn as her daughter, Dominique. And she was like, "Okay, I know she's in Beverly Hills right now. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna find my daughter once and for all." She went to LA on May 11th of 2018, found out that her daughter was staying at the Renaissance Inn Marriott in Beverly Hills. Basically what happened is Michelle had to play this safe. She knew that there was people with Joycelyn and Dominique who didn't want their families contacting them. So she went to the front desk and she said, "Hey, my daughter Dominique's staying here and it's Mother's Day, so I want to surprise her, but I don't want her to know I'm here. So can you just tell her there's like a package down here for her so I can surprise her?" So the front desk called up to the room and apparently she or somebody who was on the phone said they didn't want to come down. But then the manager of the hotel came out and he was like, "Do you want me to just bring you up so you can see your daughter?" And he brought her up to the room. And when Dominique opened the door, you could tell on this girl's face, like she was just so happy to see her mother. And she started crying and they both started crying and hugging. But she's also nervous, right? She keeps looking behind her and she's like, "Somebody else is here. I can't talk right now, I have to go." And she closes the door on her mother's face. Michelle then gets in the elevator, she's crying. She goes down to the lobby, she's crying. She walks outside, she's crying. She's crying from a mixture of just being so happy to have hugged and touched her daughter she hasn't seen or heard from in so long, and also being, so sad because now it's like, where she is, that she's okay, but you still don't have her. While she's standing outside the hotel crying, though, the hotel manager comes out and he's like, "Your daughter's on the phone at the front desk and she wants to talk to you." So Michelle goes back into the hotel, gets the phone, and you can't hear the conversation because this was all in the docuseries. You can't hear the conversation, but you can hear Michelle. She keeps saying, don't cry, it's okay, I love you, I miss you." And Dominique tells her, "Come back at 6. I cannot talk right now, but come back at 6. So Michelle leaves. She comes back that evening. When she gets back, though, the hotel manager informs her that her daughter, Dominique, has called the police on her and said that this woman is not my mother and I don't want her around. And if you don't leave the premises right now, we have to have you arrested. Michelle did not believe that her daughter had called the police on her, so she snuck back into the hotel. Good for this woman. She is not giving up on her daughter. She's literally putting herself in a position where she might get arrested, but she's not giving up on her daughter. She goes back into the hotel, she sneaks in, she goes into a bathroom and she calls Dominique and she's like, "I'm in this bathroom down here. Come and meet me." Dominique comes down with a backpack on. And they escape, they run out of the hotel like somebody's chasing them. They get in the car and they leave. And Dominique's in the car crying, and her mother says, "Why are you crying?" And Dominique says, "I'm happy. It was just the hardest decision I've ever had to make." So you can see the mental toll it's taken on her. She clearly wanted to leave, but it was a hard decision for her because even though she wanted to leave, even though she knew what was happening wasn't right, she was so manipulated by him that it was still even hard to walk away from the person that she wanted to walk away from. And the story of Michelle and Dominique is pretty clear evidence to me of not only a mother's love, but when somebody is being abused or has distanced themselves from you because of something that their boyfriend or their husband or their abuser wants them to do because he doesn't or she doesn't want them talking to you, don't give up on that person, because that's exactly what the abuser wants. The abuser wants you to get just sick of being pushed away, that you'll just turn your back and say, well, screw you then. That's what they want, because they want that person to not have anybody. And if you keep trying, and if you keep showing that person that you're there for them, that you can be their escape plan no matter what, that's what they need. That might be all they need to finally make the move to leave. But if they don't feel like they have you or anybody, they probably never will. So at this point, where we stand today, Joycelyn is still with R. Kelly, and Joycelyn's parents are still fighting to get her back. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the Savages. Joycelyn claims that her father knew the whole time what was happening, that he basically sold her to R. Kelly. Her father denies it. We don't know what to believe. Either way, she probably shouldn't be with R. Kelly. There's another girl that is still with R. Kelly, though, as well. Her name is Azrael Clary. She met R. Kelly when she was 17 at one of his concerts that her parents brought her to. Her parents' names are Angelo and Alice Clary. So they brought her to this concert, and he had actually spotted her in the crowd as well as some other girls and brought them up on stage to, dance on stage with him while he was singing. After the concert, Azrael's parents would, go outside and waited for their daughter by the exit. It took a while for her to come out. Finally, she did come out, and she was so excited. She was over the moon. She was like, he had me sing for him. He thinks I have talent, and he wants to, work with me. Azrael was in the 11th grade when this happened, and she began secretly communicating and calling R. Kelly, who's like in his 50s. One day after school, she wasn't home on time when she should have been, and her mother got worried, so she kept calling her daughter, not getting an answer. Finally, Azrael answered and was like, "Don't worry, I'm just at a hotel with R. Kelly. I'm auditioning for him." And Azrael's parents were like, "Hell no, you are not." They knew his reputation. They knew what he was about. And they'd already told their daughter that they didn't want her being alone with him, that one of them always had to be present if she was meeting with him. So they leave work, they go to the hotel, they see R. Kelly's tour bus outside, and they see their daughter's car. They go to the front desk and they're like, "Hey, we know R. Kelly's here. Our daughter's with him, so where's she at?" And the front desk guy is like, "No, they're not here." And the Clarys, once again, they're not having this. They're like, "We know they're here. We see his tour bus. That's our daughter's car. We need to find our daughter." And then the hotel manager guy was like, "Oh, well, he has 2 floors, so it's going to take me a while. I got to find him." They eventually did find R. Kelly and Azrael in a room by themselves in a hotel. They busted in and they were basically like, "What's going on here?" And R. Kelly was like, "She's auditioning for me." And the Clarys were like, "Nope, we're leaving." So they took their daughter and they left. And of course, Azrael's pissed. She's a teenage girl. She was just in a room with one of her idols. He's promising he's going to make her famous, and your parents just came in and ruined the whole thing, right? That's what she's thinking. That's how she's acting in the car the whole way home. She's like, "This is my dream, guys. Like, how could you do this to me? You embarrassed me." So her parents talk, and they're like, "Well, we don't want to stop her from achieving her dream, but we got to talk to this guy." So they called R. Kelly, and they said, "We're really disappointed with the way you handled this. Like, is this typically how you conduct business? Because there's no reason you should be in a hotel room by yourself with a 17-year-old girl. We've made that very clear." And R. Kelly said, "She told me it was perfectly okay that you guys knew about it. I'm sorry, this is not usually the way I conduct business." So he Pied Pipered them, basically, and they were like, "Okay, I guess it's all right. As long as when she's on tour with you or visiting you or traveling with you, one of us is always with her." So Azrael would go to Chicago to be at the recording studio with R. Kelly, And either her mother, her father, or her older sister Isis was always with her. And these are smart parents, right? These are smart parents that they know they don't want their teenage daughter alone with this guy. And they plan to always have a chaperone with her, but this doesn't work. As Isis spent time with her sister and R. Kelly and the whole atmosphere, she started to notice the controlling behavior. They were in a hotel once, and Isis was going to go out to grab food. She's hungry. And Azrael was like, no, you can't. You have to come back. R. Kelly's going to get us. You have to ask permission. And Isis was like, I'm a grown-ass woman. I'm not asking permission from some man to see if I can go get some food. And she left. Well, when she woke up the next morning, Azrael was gone. So Isis walked to the recording studio in Chicago and knocked on the door. And one of the guys in there was like, no, they're not here. They left. And Isis freaks out, right? Understandably, this is her little sister. And she's like, where are they? What do you mean they're gone? Where did they go? She didn't tell me anything. What's happening? And she's like making a scene. And then Azrael comes out from the back and she's like, what's going on? And Isis says, what's going on is we're leaving. So she grabs her by the arm. She's like pulling her out the door. And R. Kelly's on the other side of this girl, grabbing her other arm, pulling her to keep her there. So they're having a tug of war with this little girl. And finally, R. Kelly tells his cronies, get rid of her and get her out of here. You know, not get rid of her, like don't kill her. I know I made that motion, but that's not what he meant, I don't think. So he says, get her out of here. And the Goonies like grab her, pick her up, put her in the car, and they drop her off in the back alleyway of a McDonald's, probably the very same McDonald's he used to pick up teenage girls from back in the day. And they tell her, if you say anything about this to anybody, your sister will not make it. Basically threatened her. Something bad was going to happen to Azrael if she said anything. So the next day, the Clarys, Azrael's parents, they fly out to Chicago and they meet with R. Kelly and they're like, what the hell's going on here? And he's like, it's not like that at all. Isis completely overreacted. It wasn't like that. We're all good here. And even Isis at that point admitted maybe she had overreacted, probably because she was scared because she'd been dropped off in the back alleyway of some McDonald's and threatened. But that's just my opinion. Still, the Clarys weren't comfortable, so they took both their daughters and they flew home. But R. Kelly did not want Azrael at home. He wanted Azrael with him, so he invited her to go out on tour with him, and her parents were at first not comfortable with it, obviously, but he promised them that she would have a female chaperone, somebody from the record label, with her at all time, making sure she was keeping going with her schoolwork so she wasn't gonna, drop out of high school or anything. She was gonna keep doing her work on the road and that she would be completely okay. They could call him whenever they wanted to check up on her, which they often did. And they agreed to it, and she went out on the road with him. In December of 2015, R. Kelly does an interview with Huffington Post Live, and he's extremely condescending and rude to his female interviewer. And then eventually he just gets upset at what she's asking, probably because she's not backing down and calling him daddy. And he says this interview's over, and then he leaves.
I don't dispute
and
that
how
you have,
much they've bought my records.
I don't dispute that
and
you
how
have
great
wonderful
my fans
fans,
has been,
but
how
what
they
we're-
have supported me throughout the years. I don't give people that's negative towards me the time of day.
Let's talk about your music.
You shouldn't if you do, but I'm telling you, if you do, that's kind of contagious. If when you start getting negativity coming at you, you pretty much don't want to hear that crap. And especially if it was I don't even know how many years ago. So what I'm going to tell you is that I am going to sit here and talk to you like you are the beautiful lady you are, and I'm going to talk to you with respect, and I'm going to let you know that any other negative things come at me out of your mouth as far as negativity, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out and I'm going to go to McDonald's. Hopefully the McRib is out. And I'm going to
Mr.
go
Kelly?
home to Chicago, and I'm going to play me some basketball, go to the studio, and just, and work on my next album,
Okay,
which
so
is the Christmas album.
a few
12 Nights
things,
of
because
Christmas
we're not doing an
that comes
interview at the
out
moment.
next
You're
year.
talking, we're not doing an interview. Hang
I
on a
don't care.
second.
I'm just
Let's
here
do
to
this.
talk. Whether
Hang
the
on,
camera's on or not,
oh, well, I know
you're
you're enjoying the cameras. A couple of things. One, absolutely your prerogative. If you ever want to leave, you can certainly leave.
Yeah,
Another thing, thank you.
If the next question is something negative out of your mouth, with all due respect, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Okay, a couple of things. One, there's going to be no negativity. I'm just asking you questions.
Well, I know the difference
I'm asking
between
you
a negative
questions.
question and a positive one. So
But
if I think it's negative, I'm going to walk.
I'm not going to ask you questions
With all due
that are...
respect to all of you guys here.
So let's talk about your lyrics for a moment, okay? So would you say that you have a healthy relationship with sex? Sex is mentioned frequently in your lyrics. In many of the songs you talk about having sex with women, multiple women. Would you say that you have a healthy relationship with sex? and that is reflected musically?
I would have to say this. I did not come here to get interrogated. I didn't come here for a deposition. You know what a deposition is?
I'm very aware of what a deposition is. I'm asking you about your music.
With me when
I asked about your
I say
music.
that this sounds sort of like a deposition.
I think it may be the accent, but no, I'm asking you specifically about your music.
I didn't even hear your accent. I only hear your English.
It's I'm
I'm not
asking you
paying
about
attention to your accent.
I'm asking.
I'm only paying attention to the English that comes out of your mouth.
I'm asking you about your music
not a
and your
deposition.
lyrics.
This is a deposition. This is not about R. Kelly. This is not about music. This is not about someone who works hard on his music who has an album out. This is about trying to interrogate me, and this is about, disrespect. And I'm going to sit here.
Mr. Kelly, I don't believe I'm
disrespected.
Mr. Kelly, I don't believe I'm disrespecting you. I asked you a
Well,
very
that's
specific
the
question about your
level of
lyrics.
Your intelligence, not mine.
I asked you a very specific question about your music and your lyrics.
Well, if you don't think you're disrespecting me, then that's just, like I say, the level of your intelligence, not mine. But
Okay.
I respect it.
I'm going to ask about
I respect that you have a job.
I'm going to just go to a comment
Do you
from...
drink?
Do I drink? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you get drunk?
Yeah.
You fall all over and not know where you're at?
I don't understand the line of questioning, but no.
I
it
say
was-
exactly. But it ain't positive, is it? It has nothing to do with your job, does it?
But I'm asking you specifically about your music and your lyrics.
Well, you
that
asked
has
me
very
about
much
my
about your
life,
job.
my-
Let's bring in one of...
I'm in New York. I'm having a great time. I'm finna go visit some friends. I'm finna do some more business. I'm finna have a great time. I didn't come here for you to spoil that.
a
So
couple...
one more
well,
thing.
this
You
is
got one more question.
You're here to promote your
I have
album.
one more question.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
What do you say to the multiple fans, the many fans who are watching and listening that
I
say
I
there
love
have
my
been
fans.
multiple
I say
accusations
I love my
against you,
fans.
against
I
young
say
women
I
in
love all of my
Chicago,
fans.
and they
People
are
that are against
concerned
me,
about your
people that are
past,
with
and that's
me, I
impacting
love
them from
all.
purchasing your
I love
music
them
sales.
all. It doesn't matter who they are. If they hate me, they love me, they want to destroy me, whatever. I love them all. And I love you too.
You don't need to give me any of your love,
I love
sir.
everybody.
You really don't need to give me your love. I just wanted to ask the question, what do you say to the... What do you say to the fans, your fans who don't want to buy your music?
I'm not going to allow you to do that, but I love you. I love my
Okay,
fans.
I have
love
a video
everybody.
question for you from a
You don't
fan
have
if
no
you...
video questions for me because this interview is over.
Okay.
Now, on December 30th, Azrael turned 18. The last time her parents have seen her to this day was at her high school graduation. When she turned 18, she cut contact off. They haven't spoken to her, they haven't seen her, they don't know where she is or what's going on with her. That's when ISIS admitted to them what had actually gone down at the recording studio. And she said not only that, but she would go into different rooms at the recording studio, and there was all sorts of girls just waiting in these rooms who wouldn't talk to her and wouldn't answer questions from her. They just looked at her. And she said that she saw buckets in the corners of these rooms that were being used as bathrooms, basically. They have tried everything. They camp out outside the recording studio. They go to concerts that he's having to see if she's going to be there. They've tried everything to find her, but she's not reaching out to them, and they don't know what's going on with her. The Clarys and the Savages started working together, obviously sharing the same kind of story and the same kind of experiences, and they will, keep asking the police to do welfare or wellness checks on their daughters. And that's just basically when you're out of contact with somebody and you don't know if they're okay, you can have the police go and check on them for you. But the police say that both Azrael and Joycelyn don't want to leave, that they're absolutely fine. They look like they're being fed. There's no bruises on them. They look fine, so there's nothing they can do. They did wellness checks at R. Kelly's house in Atlanta and at the studio in Chicago, and allegedly, there's that word again, allegedly, because R. Kelly has friends and connections in the police department in Chicago, he was tipped off about the wellness check that was happening at the studio in Chicago, so he was able to prepare for that. So, at this point, it's pretty clear to me, and I don't know how you feel about it, but it's pretty clear to me that when he got in trouble for messing with underage girls, with the sex tape and all the allegations and all the lawsuits that came out, he modified his technique and he started going for girls who were just barely legal, right? 17, 18. And you may say that's okay. That's okay, because at this point, is it sexual abuse? It's not, sexual abuse of a minor, so it's okay. But it's not okay. Neither are these birds loudly barking outside my house. Abuse that happened to these underage girls is horrible and obviously a huge issue. But he didn't just keep his abuse and his manipulation and his controlling for the younger girls, especially when he realized that was going to get him in trouble, so he had to kind of like move to an older age bracket. The fact is, what he's doing to these 17 and 18 and 19-year-old girls isn't really any better, is it? Because they're still young, they still don't know who they are, they still don't deserve to be manipulated and mentally and emotionally abused, told they're terrible, made to have sex with each other in orgies that they don't want to do, and have this whole uneven power balance where you basically have somebody you've looked up to your entire life, who you trust, who you admire and respect for their musical ability and the philanthropic things they've done for the community and the world, and you're like, this is a great person. You don't deserve to have that person then turn out to be a monster who just wants to use you and keep you locked up in their house so they can have sex with you whenever they want. Nobody deserves that. Not at 14, not at 20, not at 45. Nobody deserves that. He's a predator of women. He hurts women of all ages, of all kinds. He doesn't discriminate. And if anybody watched my Jim Jones video, you have no idea how many times I watched this documentary and just screamed inside my head, Jim Jones, Jim Jones. Like, this is exactly what Jim Jones did to such an incredible extent. And no wonder people will say now that R. Kelly has a sex cult or a sex ring. That's pretty much what it is. You have women and girls living in your house whose main purpose is to have sex with you when you want, to have sex with each other when you want, to be recorded by you, to be degraded by you, to be controlled by you, to be hurt by you. What is that other than a sex cult or a sex ring? It's not a healthy relationship. It's not a healthy dynamic. You're not a family. So for instance, Asante McGee, I hope that's how you say her name, Asante McGee, she was 35 when she met R. Kelly, and she was a super fan, right? So she was somebody who, if you said a bad word about R. Kelly, like, she would cut you off. She claims as long as he felt like you were weak-minded, it didn't matter what age you were. If he felt like he could control you, you were okay in his book. She started dating him in 2014, and he came right out front. He was like, I've got other girls that I mess with, so if you're not okay with that, this isn't going to work. And she had literally been in a marriage where she'd been cheated on. So now she's dating a guy who tells her he's cheating on her. And she said, well, I thought at least he was honest about it. You know, he was upfront about it. He wasn't trying to hide it. So this was her idol. She felt lucky to be with him. She's like, whatever, I'm part of a harem, but at least I get to spend time with this man. She was from Atlanta, and for a while they would just spend time together when he came into Atlanta to, you know, live in his home or have business there, and they would spend time together there. And she said it was normal, like relationship. She didn't know about any other girls. She knew there were other girls that he was seeing, but he didn't introduce her to any of them. He didn't bring them around. He didn't talk about them. When they were together, they just had like a normal relationship. She started to see the change after about 2 years. She had actually gone on tour with him, like went to one of his shows in Houston, and then instead of going home, she thought she was going to go home to Atlanta. His manager basically said, like, make sure you get your stuff because you're not going to have anything in the next city. So he just like assumed she was going to go on tour with him. When they got back to Atlanta, he brought her and some other girls to his home, and he opened the door and like showed them in and said, welcome home, my babies. Then he proceeded to walk them around the house and give them the tour and said, this is your bedroom, like put your stuff up in your closet, get what you need, this is where you live now. Like, he just told her, you're moving in with me. Not even that. He said, this is where you live now. After he moved her into his home, that's when the having to ask permission for everything started. Asante says that she was basically locked in her room, and in order to be allowed to come out, she had to beat on the floor, like stomp on the floor until he heard her and gave her permission. And sometimes she would stomp for hours before he acknowledged her. She took the docuseries makers around the house. It's vacant now. He was evicted from it because he couldn't pay the mortgage. But she took them around the house, and she's clearly really upset when she just walks up the front porch, and then she walks in and she's upset, and then they go upstairs and she can't even go into the room that she used to live in. She's like, I don't want to go in here. I'll just show you other rooms. And she brings the documentary makers to a room called the Black Room. And she says this was all black in here. Black curtains, black carpet, black furniture, everything was black. And this is where the worst of it always happened. She says the Black Room will always be to her the most degrading place on earth. Then there was another woman, another older woman, and her name was Kitty Jones. She met him in 2011 when she was a radio DJ in Dallas, and she was 33 at the time. He slipped her his number, they would talk on the phone, and eventually she quit her job and moved to Chicago to be with him. And everybody was like, you're crazy, you're crazy. And she was like, no, I love him. And she thought she loved him. So obviously her friends would ask her like about the sex tape, like, is it true? And she would get offended and tell them like, why are you asking me that? But she got curious and she Googled it. She called him crying and upset when she saw the tape, and he was pissed. He told her like, you're stupid. Why would you do that? Get your ass back here. I'm gonna whip your ass. And when they did see each other, he did. He beat her. She said she felt compelled to protect him because she loved him. She also didn't want to feel stupid. Everybody told her it was a bad idea, and she went ahead and did it anyways. If she went back now and told them what happened, they would all say, I told you so, and she just didn't want to deal with that. While she lived with him, she also talks about the things that they could and couldn't do, the rules, and what would happen if you broke them. She says that, you had to stand up when he entered the room, and you couldn't watch TV at first because he didn't want them seeing anything about him in the media. But he liked to watch Dance Moms a lot, which is creepy because it's a show about little girls dancing. If you broke the rules, you'd be confined, your cell phone would be taken away, you'd be hit. He would not talk to you, he would ignore you. You could be in the same room with him and you would talk to him and he would just act like you weren't there, which that's the silent treatment, like on a whole new level. And I hate the silent treatment. That would drive me crazy. I cannot stand the silent treatment. I would rather be yelling at somebody and have them yelling at me than have them completely ignore me. So don't ever use that against me. He asked her to go on the Single Ladies tour with him, and she felt, like flattered because he wanted her to get up on stage and be the girl in the cage. The girl in the cage, which was basically the part she had to play, was this girl in a cage who is being imprisoned, which is so ironic because in real life she is being imprisoned. But Kitty Jones said that he made the girls all sign contracts, basically admitting that they had stolen from him or their families had stolen from him. That way he could use it against them if they ever turn against him. Which, let me just say, Jim Jones, right? We're going to say Jim Jones again. Jim Jones. Plus, he's recording everything they do behind closed doors, if you know what I mean. So you've got signed contracts that might incriminate somebody. You've got hours and hours of videotape footage, which are very incriminating, especially as a woman. You don't want that to get out, right? And you have just the mental abuse and the constant manipulation that's happening. Kitty says all the things that he wanted her to do that she wasn't comfortable with, like being with the other girls, which he finally did introduce her to the other girls. She would feel scared to say no because of the consequences. One time she was starved for 3 days and they were just sitting there eating. Well, everybody else was, and she was sitting there not eating. And she wasn't even doing anything. She was just being quiet. And then he looked at her and said, don't effing look at me or stare at me while I'm eating. And she was like, I'm not staring at you. And then he slapped her. So pretty much it was constant fear. You're living in constant fear. And she didn't want to say no to the things that he wanted her to do because of that fear. Even when she finally built up the strength to leave, she was in the airport. She was still torn in two about it. And she tried calling him and she said to herself, if he answers, I'm going to go back. But he didn't answer, so she didn't go back and she finally escaped. So if you haven't seen the docuseries, I definitely think you should watch it. There's a couple things that I would ask you guys to do if you support what I'm saying here, which is we have to stop these kinds of things from happening. I was severely upset while I was watching this docuseries. I would find myself having to pause it and go, scoop up my 2-year-old daughter in my arms and say, I'm never gonna let anything happen to you. I'll never let this happen to you. I'll protect you. Knowing full well that I might not be able to keep that promise because the world's a scary place. And as much as I want to protect her, I still have to let her live her own life when she gets older. So there's predators out there. We have to put a stop to it. And we have to put a stop to R. Kelly. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's been going on since this documentary came out. Kanye West kind of made a public announcement and said, oh, you should separate the artist from the artist's work. Like, listening to his music doesn't mean you support him, but actually it does. That's how you support an artist. Listening to an artist's music is how you support an artist. If you don't support the artist, you don't listen to the artist's music. I'm not telling you guys to stop listening to R. Kelly, but, consider it. There is a movement, and it's hashtag mute R. Kelly. And it's not just about having his music, taken off. And Spotify and Apple Music, they've all gotten on board and they've removed his music from their libraries. But it's not even just about that. It's about canceling his shows. So this movement, they'll actually go to concerts that he's having and they'll protest outside of it. And it gained more and more momentum until he was actually having concerts canceled. And he stopped bringing in the income from these shows. And that's why he couldn't afford his mortgage anymore. And, good. You have to have some repercussions now. You may not be in prison, but I think we should try to make his life as difficult as possible at this point, in my opinion. So if you're interested in that movement, being a part of it, looking into it, just look for hashtag mute R. Kelly. There's also obviously the hashtag Me Too movement, who has become a big part of what's going on with R. Kelly. I definitely think he should be brought back to court for this. And I have to ask a question, why this was able to go on for so long. That's my biggest question. Why did this go on for so long? And a lot of people have made the comment and the statement that if these girls had been white girls, this shit would have been over with from the beginning. And I have to agree at this point. Everybody knew. How many times have I said that in this video? Everybody knew. Dozens of people around him knew what he was doing to these girls. I have to imagine more people knew than we even want to admit. But nothing happened. And why? Why is it that these little girls whose lives were changed and, ruined to some extent, why did nobody care about them enough to stand up for them and have their back? So there's another girl, and her name is Faith Rogers, and she met R. Kelly when she was 19 in March of 2017. She was with him for about a year. She claims that they had sex, he recorded it on an iPad, and then, he would be demanding and directive during the act, like, tell daddy you like it. Ugh. We need to work on your moaning skills. Things like that. Super creepy. Like, this is a man in his 50s, okay? So she saw he was recording it on an iPad. And then, he revealed to her about his harem in his home, said they were his family and girls he'd raised and mentored. And he then introduces her to Joycelyn, who Faith says jumped up like a puppy when he walked in the room to kiss him. But when he wasn't around, she basically was like a robot. Like, no emotion, just sat there. So eventually Faith did cut ties with R. Kelly with no intent to reconnect, and she got in touch with the Savages to let them know that she'd seen their daughter Joycelyn and that she was okay, I guess. And Joycelyn's father said, you should get yourself checked because we know for a fact that our daughter has an STD from him that she, got from him and it's incurable. So Faith goes to get checked and turns out she has herpes, which she claims she got from R. Kelly. So she's actually suing him for sexual assault and, giving her an STD knowingly. Like, he knew he had it and he gave it to her, which is illegal. So that's happening now. And, now people are talking out, right? Now everybody's taking a stand. Charlemagne the God, Chance the Rapper, Joe Budden, John Legend, Tom Joyner, who's a very popular radio personality. He was asked by Tarana Burke, who's the founder of the Me Too movement. She said, can you stop playing R. Kelly's music? And he was like, absolutely, no problem. So that was great. And then in May 2018, you've got Time's Up. This is a group of women of color like Ava Longoria, Kerry Washington, Shonda Rhimes, America Ferrara. They basically, they say they've had enough and they want it known and heard and stopped, which, like I said, is great. But where was all this energy back in the day, right? Crickets back then. Crickets in the 90s and the 2000s when this was all going on. Now we all want to talk about it. And I'm part of the problem. And we're all part of the problem, right? Because when somebody brought this up to me, I think it was on a live a couple of weeks ago, they were like, what about the R. Kelly documentary? And I said, I thought we all just kind of knew. Didn't we already know that? Like, did new stuff come out? Like, what was wrong with me? Didn't we already know that? Well, yeah, I had to get deeper and I had to personalize these women and I had to, hear their stories from their own mouths. And I had to look at it as more than just like, oh, it's a celebrity getting himself in a sex scandal again. This was so much more than that. So he's a serial abuser, and he's not gonna stop until something happens. He's never stopped all these years. He's not going to now. And really the most important thing that I want to get across in this video is if you are somebody who is being abused like this, if this sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. There's people out there who want to help you. There's people out there who are here for you. And you need to reach out to somebody. If you need to, reach out to me. But there are people here for you who want to help you and want to see you live your life without this dark cloud hanging over you. You're never alone. I don't want any person to ever have to go through this alone and feel like they have no way out, because you always do. There's people out there who care about you. There's people out there who want to help you. Please reach out. Please do something, because no matter what anybody would have you think, you're not alone. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm very active on both those platforms, and I'd love to talk to you guys more. I love you guys so much. Have a beautiful day, and stay kind and stay beautiful.
I feel it in my bones, like a blaze of fire dancing in the cold. Oh, like the rhythm of the sun. Well, I was wide awake until the dawn upon her face, and the echoes of our song as it hummed along, saying everything is gonna work out fine, and all the hopes we have will fall in line, 'cause love will take all our pain away. So stay with me, stay with me. I need you here right now. Now say it with me, say it with me.